that, now we'll turn over to the unveiling of our first ever CodeX Prize, and I will turn it over to Mike.
So hello, everybody. Welcome to this particular last section of the morning's festivities, the awarding of the 2021 CodeX Prize. I'm Michael Genezareth. I'm the research director of CodeX. People sometimes ask me what a research director does. I have to say it's a good question. A little of this, a little of that. I spend time trying to balance research and application, spend time trying to find funding, spend a lot of time trying to make sense of the activities of multiple creative, opinionated researchers. It's sometimes frequently exasperating, never boring, but always a lot of fun. One thing that's not exasperating, my one activity this year that's not exasperating and certainly not boring, is that I get to announce the winners of the 2021 CodeX Prize. So let me tell you what that is. First of all, it's an annual award beginning this year that's given to an individual or individuals for noteworthy contribution to computational law. So an article, a program, an organization that has made a significant and enduring contribution to the law. In trying to figure out who should be awarded the prize this year, we polled about a dozen or more top experts in the field of computational law to nominate individual pieces of work that they felt was worthy of the CodeX Prize. And interestingly, virtually every one of them mentioned the subject of this year's prize. You may be guessing who that is if you know anything about the field, and also because the individuals' names have just appeared here. And the winners of this year's award, the award is going to be awarded to Bob Kowalski, Fariba Sadri, and Marek Sergot, in acknowledgement of their work in the application of logic programming in the analysis of the and implementation and analysis, formalization and analysis of the British Nationality Act. Over the years, this is probably one of the most impactful and first and most cited pieces of research in the early days of computational law. It was the subject of many different papers. One of those, the one at the top here, British Nationality Act as a logic program, is certainly the most cited in my experience. And we require here at Stanford, we require every incoming student to read this paper. It certainly is a significant contribution, and it is enduring, having lasted since 1986 and continuing to be of importance today. So let me just say that I'm happy to see that all three of the award winners are here with us today to receive the award. I wish I could hand the award to them each individually, but under the circumstances, it's got to be done virtually. And this is what it would look like if I were handing it to you individually. You will all be mailed a suitably disinfected version of this award and should appear in your mailboxes soon. I wish we could go do more than that. Unfortunately, we can't give you a black tie dinner. We can't introduce you to the king the way those show-offs in Scandinavia do. But we can give you this physical award. And there is also something a little more substantial, namely a check will appear in each of your inboxes or possibly in your bank accounts over the next few days to acknowledge the award. It's not a lot, but at least it's something to suggest that there's more to it than just a plaque. Bob, I'm hoping, for example, you may be able to use this to buy a new tree for your place in Petworth. Hopefully you'll call it the CodeX tree. Ideally, you'll call it the CodeX tree. So here we have them all three of the award winners are here with us today. And in preparation for the and congratulations to you all. In preparation for this, I asked you whether you would be willing to make some remarks, and if you would like to chime in, feel free to do so. But I believe I was told at least that you folks had discussed this with each other and suggested that Bob might speak for all of you, but I'll leave it to you folks to decide how to spend a few minutes to react. Maybe just say a little bit about the prize and what you think about the field, where it is, where it's going, and so forth. Bob, let me turn it over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Michael, and thank you so much, the CodeX committee. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes, yes.
As I said, I thank you so much, and I will thank you again before I finish. But maybe, as you said, it's worth just spending a moment to go over the history that we, Fariba, Marek, and I have suffered since our work on the British Nationality Act. When it was first published, it created an enormous amount of controversy in the national press here in Britain. We were attacked in letters to the editor in the Guardian as having a muddled view of the legal process. And this was partly due to our not involving any legal scholars in coding the British Nationality Act, for which I blame totally Marek and Fariba. But nonetheless, what perhaps some of the critics didn't appreciate is how well written the British Nationality Act actually was. I mean, it is a beautiful piece of writing, which didn't have very much need for legal interpretation, but that's by the by. Also, the critics didn't appreciate that at least for some of us, our interests weren't so much in producing a practical application to prevent immigrants from entering the British geography, but rather most of us were primarily concerned with studying the knowledge representation issues. Could logic programming, as it stood at that time, be capable of representing most or all of the British Nationality Act? And if not, what kind of extensions were required? And indeed, from the point of view of I think, my research and Marek's research, most of our work in the subsequent decade or two was inspired by the limitations of the logic programming systems that we had at the time. And Fariba and I, for example, did a lot of work on rules and exceptions and how to represent negation adequately in legal contexts and other applications as well. Marek and I worked very hard on temporal reasoning and events and states and how to represent the relationship between events taking place, like being born and then becoming a British citizen as a result of being born in the right place and at the right time. Methodological reasoning, talking about text and talking about conditions that are violated and conclusions that no longer follow once other conditions begin to hold. Lots of important areas of research and knowledge representation were spurred by that activity. And of course, there were follow-up activities, both at Imperial College and elsewhere throughout the world, applications of Prolog and logic programming to legal applications. But in parallel, the Japanese fifth generation project arose. It was a 10-year, very intensive project, which caused havoc throughout the world of computing. Its goal was to produce true artificial intelligence systems based on logic programming technology. At first, they looked at the use of Prolog, and then they went down a different path looking at a concurrent logic programming language, which is very remote from Prolog. As a result, they did not accomplish their objectives, and AI and logic programming went into worldwide decline for perhaps another decade or so. So too did applications of logic programming to legal applications. So that was a difficult period. But we're seeing the revival of logic programming based approaches. And I think it's probably fair to say, I think that Michael would say that logic programming is now possibly the foremost approach for representing legal texts in a computable form. We've also seen a revival because of smart contracts and the fact that people are writing smart contracts which look like legal contracts, and they're writing them in quite low-level languages. And people are asking whether or not it's possible to write them in higher-level languages. And most people who seem to be asking that question are looking at functional programming languages, but there's still some scope, I think a lot of scope for looking at logic programming, which is not at the moment being looked at very seriously in that domain. On the other hand, logic programming is being looked at in the area of rules as code, which is not contract legislation, contract law, but legislation. Legislators around the world are becoming interested, and this has not come up, I don't think, in today's meeting, but legislators are looking at regulations, law as code, and their systems like blocks developed by Jason Morris in Alberta, and Lexon being developed by Dietrich in Australia seem to be quite promising in that area. And they're both based on logic programming, which is very encouraging from our point of view. And I think we can see some growing trends, and not only a return to logic programming based approaches, but also state trends. We're seeing, as Oliver Goodenough has often argued in quite compelling terms, we're seeing a focus on state transition systems, which we also have in the event calculus. And that's been very encouraging to have him be provoking us in that way and challenging us. But we're also seeing with Lexon and blocks, and also with Oracle, what's it called? Oracle Intelligent Automation. We're seeing logic programming systems which use natural language. And I think that's the future of computational law. I think the future of computational law lies in logic programming systems with English or natural language syntax. And I, among others, are working towards that goal. Inspired by the view that well-written legal rules, as we had in the British Nationality Act, are like logic programs, but they can be read by ordinary people without any special training in mathematics, computing, or logic. So my feeling is that approach is going to become very important in the very near future, and that systems being developed today will very soon become dominant. I want to finish by thanking my friends and colleagues. I want to thank Marek. I want to thank Fariba. I want to thank Marek in particular for being such an indispensable part of this work, for the work we did together on legal reasoning, for the work we did together on the event calculus, for reasoning about time. I want to thank Fariba for her initial work on doing the vast bulk of the coding of the British Nationality Act, for our later work on comparing the event calculus and the relationship with the situation calculus, for her PhD work on integrity checking and deductive databases, which has led to a new language which incorporates reactive rules, which are conditional imperatives, into a logic programming framework similar to active rules, which Michael has developed. I think we're beginning to converge on the need for such extensions of logic programming. And I want to thank Michael again, not only for the award, but more importantly for all the support, inspiration, and for being a kindred spirit. I also want to thank Oliver for being a provocative one and helping us to address the challenges that he draws to our attention. So thank both of you, and thank the CodeX committee on behalf of Marek, me, and Fariba. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And congratulations once again to all three of you. The award is well deserved. And in fact, we wouldn't be here today if it weren't for you. CodeX was founded on the idea of promoting computational law, which was, of course, initiated to a large extent and inspired by your early work. So thank you, folks, for being there. And we're glad to give back this small acknowledgement of your tremendous contribution to the field. Okay, now it's time for us to take a break. Lunchtime for if you're here, or maybe it's breakfast, or maybe it's dinner, or maybe midnight snack, depending on where you are. Go off and enjoy yourselves for a little while. We don't have a lot of time, however. we've run a little bit over, and so we're going to try to stay on schedule for the afternoon, which means we'll reconvene again at 12:30 PDT, Pacific Daylight Time. So that's just under a half hour from now. Hope to see you all back here then. Bye.